Hey, it's Dave. Welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk a little bit about AC/DC. I know I've talked about them in the past before and different reasons. Today I want to talk about two albums that I think are very underrated by them. And then I'll talk a little bit about the band and everything else. Now, as a kid, I grew up a huge AC/DC fan. In fact, I was 12 when Back in Black came out, and I remember hearing that opening, that I was so big into that. It was like Hell's Bells came out, You Shook Me All Night Long, What Do You Do for Money, Honey, that whole Shoot the Thrill. Everything on that album I loved. To me, that's a perfect album, and it still is. And of course, if you look, it's one of the biggest selling albums of all time. It's a great album. And when that album came out, the first singer, Bon Scott, he never really had a lot of fame in the States until Highway to Hell. And you have people who are just everyday contrarians, no matter what it is. Nancy Wilson's the best singer in Heart. It's like, what? Jimmy Vaughn was the better guitar player over Stevie. Who? These people, they want to be the contrarian, so they say the most ridiculous stuff. Brian Jones was really the important guy in the Stones. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not a big fan of contrarians. So when people say, well, Bon Scott was the better for the band and all that, yeah. Back in Black is a fantastic album, and on it alone, it has sold more albums. I think it's the #2 biggest selling album worldwide behind Thriller. And don't start getting all in a tizzy. Thriller's not, because Thriller was recently beat out by the Eagles' greatest hits in the United States by the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry of America or Associate, whatever the hell it stands for. But it basically is the biggest selling album in the U.S., and Thriller is now second. But worldwide, Thriller is still the biggest selling album of all time, and the second biggest selling album of all time is AC/DC Back in Black, as far as I know today, by today's numbers. So it's a fantastic album, and it was great. And I'm not taking away anything from Bon Scott. I do love the Bon Scott albums. In fact, what I was going to say was I got into AC/DC when Back in Black came out. And then the second album I got from them, it was either for, I can't remember which came out first, but it was either For Those About to Rock or Dirty Deeds, which was re-released, first time released in the States in 1981. But it technically, I believe, was like their second album after High Voltage. But here in the States, it came out in 81. And that was kind of like my introduction to Bon Scott, which right after that, I bought Highway to Hell and loved it. Then eventually I got all the albums. It's hard to tell which one I got and which one when after that. I might have gotten Powerage next and then Flick of the Switch. But I can't recall. But overall, there were some albums that I thought were disappointing. In fact, I wasn't a huge fan of High Voltage. I loved Dirty Deeds. And then I wasn't a really big fan of Let There Be Rock. I love the live album, If You Want Blood. But in 1978, they came out with Powerage. And I love that record. It's just so fantastic. So many great songs. Rock and Roll Damnation, Riff Raff, Give Me a Bullet, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shootin'. I think that was when AC/DC caught their stride. And to me, that's a very important album. Going back to it, there's like such great rawness involved. When you listen to Riff Raff and that solo he kicks in with, it's really like, to me, if someone said, hey, describe to me what a Marshall sounds like cranked with a Gibson plugged into it, like with anything with Gibson humbuckers, and I'd say listen to the solo in Riff Raff. Because to me, I'm not a huge Marshall fan for my own playing. I don't like the color. To me, it's like a yellowish color. Like I hear it as a color. And when I hear that solo, I'm like, oh, but it works with him. And that's the sound and the color that I hear is when I hear that solo in Riff Raff. I can't really explain it. I hear it, and I don't know why. You know, Fenders have the similar tone when you put a tube screamer in front of it. It gets that sound that I'm not really thrilled with. And it has to be a tube screamer. Some of the tube screamer clones that come out don't have that color in it. And it just works as like a drive, and it's nice. But the tube screamers in general, I don't like. It adds that color to it that I don't want. And as you can see, I have no problem with yellow, but for some reason I hear it as a yellow color, and I don't like it. Whereas like a Mesa Dual Rectifier, when you crank it and put the gain on it, doesn't have that sound. It's not a metallic sound. It's strange. It's hard for me to describe. But anyways, you know, then after that they came out with Highway to Hell, which was produced by Mutt Lange, which I thought was great. Did I think Mutt Lange needed to get in on that album? I don't know. I have different feelings because I feel like there's a rawness to Powerage that I like a lot better than Highway to Hell. Needless to say, Mutt Lange did a great job on Highway to Hell. But I do like Powerage better. And Powerage, for me, is what I consider their first highly underrated album. And for anybody that's getting into AC/DC, it's a must-own. It is just great. I also think the Live If You Want Blood's a great one to check out as well. So then Bon Scott passes away and they get Brian Johnson. And talk about, I mean, how many bands can you think of that lost the primary frontman for the band and then had more success with a second guy? Something to think about. I wonder if I can think of any on the top of my head. Because, I mean, other bands have replaced the lead singer, but I'm saying replaced the lead singer mid-career and then had a bigger career with the second singer. Now all the contrarians are saying, well, but I liked Bon better. That's nice. I mean, I think it's a little bit contrarian. It's really not 100% because there is a decent argument there which guy you like better, but easily which is more successful, I would say, would be the Brian Johnson era AC/DC. For Those About to Rock, that album was an unbelievable album. I think the only reason why I don't have it as being underrated is there is some material in it that I feel is... I feel it's a little obvious. And I felt like when that album came out, like it was a little safe, but good. I mean, very good. If Back in Black is an A+, For Those About to Rock is an A-. That's where I put it, which is still a great record. However, afterwards we get Flick of the Switch. Now, Flick of the Switch to me, and for those who follow me on my Facebook Dave's Guitar channel, saw the other day that I was in the gym listening to Flick of the Switch, and I still can't believe how great an album it is. When I listen to it, there's just so many great riffs, so much great stuff going on. I think it's a very underlooked, underrated album. And I don't know if Mutt Lange was still with them. I think he might have been gone and the band produced this one. But just even the tone of everything, they sound like a loud, just great. I mean, I really can't even describe. I think all the songs are great. I think it's some of their best songs, too. And it's definitely, like, right back more towards the older vibe. In fact, I consider it like that and Powerage to be like, here's Bon Scott at his best, and here's Brian Johnson and the band at its best. And I think that, yes, Back in Black's a better album, and it's definitely produced to be like this giant monolith, and it's like, oh, you know, it's like amazing. And every song is iconic, and there's no way that Flick of the Switch is ever going to measure up to that. But Flick of the Switch, it's like every song on it's like an 8.5 or a 9. I mean, or even a 9.5. I mean, it's like it's all right there. And I give that album an A, and I think that's my second album that I would say is completely underrated. The next album was Fly on the Wall. And I remember liking some of the songs on Fly on the Wall, but I thought some of it got a little poppy, which I liked. But I just was like, it was like they came out of this Raw thing and decided they wanted to sell records again. And so I thought it was a little cliche in that respect. And then from that point on, I thought the band kind of like, Brian was losing his voice after Fly on the Wall. Not during Fly on the Wall, because Fly on the Wall, I think his voice is still great. But after, with Who Made Who, and some of the later stuff from like 86 on, to me, I think his voice was a little bit worn. And in that, I was kind of done with them. But I really just wanted to talk a little bit about Flick of the Switch as being just a fantastic album, and Powerage as just being two albums to check out, as far as like just being a great raw rock and roll band and overlooked albums that I think are great. I like Paul Di'Anno singing better than Bruce Dickinson. Oh, there's another band that's had a... Although they weren't terribly successful with Paul Di'Anno. But Dickinson, I mean, just friggin' awesome. I loved him. But Di'Anno's stuff, although I love the Killers album. The first album I'm not crazy about, but Killers I love. And Made in Japan I think stinks too. But that second album, Killers, for some reason is awesome. But they didn't reach the success, in my opinion, that AC/DC did with Highway to Hell going into Back in Black. But there's another band that had a second singer that had more success with the second singer. Since we were thinking about it. I can't think of some, so please put some down in the comments. I'd love to be reminded. I don't know why I'm blanking right now, but... oh yeah, Foreigner. No, I'm just kidding. Foreigner. It's like you want to go see Foreigner. Nobody in the band is in the band. I think Mick Jones occasionally gets on stage with them. Yeah, I'm still trying to think of a band that had a singer that had more success with the second singer. I feel like I'm missing a big one. Check out those two records. Please put some comments down there. And as always, very good.
You're right on target.
You're right on the money. Everything you said.
You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today.
You're 150% correct.